Chapter 3, Part 9. In contrast, imagine the failure of a moralistic educator sermonizing against alcoholism and presenting as an example of virtue something for which these men is not a manifestation of virtue. In this and other cases, the only sound procedure is the conscientiacal of the situation, which should be attempted from the start of the thematic investigation. Obviously, conscientiacal does not stop at the level of mere subjective perception of a situation, but through action prepares men for the struggle against the obstacles to their humanization. In another experience, this time with peasants, I observed that the unchanging motif during an entire discussion of a situation depicting work in the fields was a demand for an increase in wages and the necessity of joining together to create a union to obtain this particular demand. 3 situations were discussed during the session, and the motif was always the same. Now imagine an educator who has organized his educational program for these men, consisting of reading wholesome text in which one learns that the water is in the well. But precisely this type of thing happens all the time, in both education and politics, because it is not realized that the dialogical nature of education begins with thematic investigation. Once the decoding in the circles has been completed, the last stage of the investigation begins. As the investigators undertake a systematic interdisciplinary study of their findings, listening to the tapes recorded during the decoding sessions and studying the notes taken by the psychologist and the sociologist, the investigators begin to list the themes explicit or implicit in the affirmations made during the sessions. These themes should be classified according to the various social sciences. Classification does not mean that when the program is elaborated, the themes will be seen as belonging to isolated categories, but only that a theme is viewed in a specific manner by each of the social sciences to which it is related. The theme of development, for example, is especially appropriate to the field of economics, but not exclusively so. This theme would also be focalized by sociology, anthropology, and social psychology, fields concerned with cultural change and with the modification of attitudes and values, questions which are equally relevant to a philosophy of development. It would not be focalized by political science, a field concerned with the decisions which involve development, by education, and so forth. In this way, the themes which characterize a totality will never be approached rigidly. It would indeed be a pity if the themes, after being investigated in the richness of their interpenetration with other aspects of reality, were subsequently to be handled in such a way as to sacrifice their richness, and hence their force, to the strictures of specialties. Once the thematic demarcation is completed, each specialist presents to the interdisciplinary team a project for the breakdown of his theme. In breaking down the theme, the specialist looks for the fundamental nuclei which, comprising learning units and establishing a sequence, give a general view of the theme. As each specific project is discussed, the other specialists make suggestions. These may be incorporated into the project and/or may be included in brief essays to be written on the theme. These essays, to which bibliographic suggestions are annexed, are valuable aids in training the teacher students who will work in the culture circles. During this effort to break down the meaningful thematics, the team will recognize the need to include some fundamental themes which were not directly suggested by the people during the preceding investigation. The introduction of these themes has proved to be necessary and also corresponds to the dialogical character of education. If educational programming is dialogical, the teacher students have the right to participate by including themes not previously suggested. I call the latter type of theme hinge themes due to their function. They may either facilitate the connection between 2 themes in the program unit, filling a possible gap between the two, or they may illustrate the relations between the general program content and the view of the world held by the people. Hence, one of these themes may be located at the beginning of thematic units. The anthropological concept of culture is one of these hinge themes. It clarifies the role of people in the world, and with the world as transforming rather than adaptive beings. Once the breakdown of the thematics is completed, There follows the stage of its codification, choosing the best channel of communication for each theme and its representation. A codification may be simple or compound. The former utilizes either the visual, pictorial, or graphic, the tactile, or the auditive channel. The latter utilizes various channels. The selection of the pictorial or graphic channel depends not only on the material to be codified, but also whether or not the individuals with whom one wishes to communicate are literate. After the thematics have been codified, the didactic material, photographs, slides, film strips, posters, reading texts, and so forth, is prepared. The team may propose some themes or aspects of some themes to outside specialists as topics for recorded interviews. Let us take the theme of development as an example. The team approaches 2 or more economists of varying schools of thought, tells them about the program, and invites them to contribute an interview on the subject in language comprehensible to the audience. If the specialists accept, an interview of 15 to 20 minutes is taped. A photograph may be taken of each specialist while he is speaking. When the taped interview is presented to the culture circle, an introductory statement indicates who each speaker is, what she or he has written, done, and doing now. Meanwhile, the speaker's photograph is projected on a screen. If, for instance, the speaker is a university professor, the introduction could include a discussion regarding what the participants think of universities and what they expect of them. The group has already been told that the recorded interview will be followed by a discussion of its contents, which function as an auditive codification. The team subsequently reports to the specialist the reaction of the participants during the discussion. This technique links intellectuals, often well-intentioned, but not infrequently alienated from the reality of the people, to that reality. It also gives the people an opportunity to hear and criticize the thought of intellectuals. Some themes or nuclei may be presented by means of brief dramatizations containing the theme only, no solutions. The dramatization acts as a codification, as a problem-posing situation to be discussed. Another didactic resource, as long as it is carried out within a problem-posing rather than banking approach to education, is the reading and discussion of magazine articles, newspapers, and book chapters, beginning with passages. As in the case of the recorded interviews, the author is introduced before the group begins, and the contents are discussed afterward. Along the same lines, it is indispensable to analyze the contents of newspaper editorials following any given event. Why do different newspapers have such different interpretations of the same fact? This practice helps develop a sense of criticism so that people will react to newspapers or news broadcasts not as passive objects of communiques directed at them, but rather as consciousnesses seeking to be free. With all the didactic material prepared, to which should be added small introductory manuals, the team of educators is ready to represent to the people their own thematics in systematized and amplified form. The thematics which have come from the people return to them, not as contents to be deposited, but as problems to be solved. The first task of the basic education teachers is to present the general program of the educational campaign. The people will find themselves in this program. It will not seem strange to them, since it originated with them. The educators will also explain, based on the dialogical character of education, the presence in the program of the hinged themes, and their significance. If the educators lack sufficient funds to carry out the preliminary thematic investigation as described above, they can, with a minimum knowledge of the situation, select some basic themes to serve as codifications to be investigated. Accordingly, they can begin with introductory themes and simultaneously initiate further thematic investigation. One of these basic themes, and one which I consider central and indispensable, is the anthropological concept of culture. Whether men and women are peasants or urban workers, learning to read or enrolled in a post-literacy program, the starting point of their search to know more, in the instrumental meaning of the term, is the debate of the concept. As they discuss the world of culture, they express their level of awareness and reality, in which various themes are implicit. their discussion touches upon other aspects of reality, which comes to be perceived in an increasingly critical manner. These aspects, in turn, involve many other themes. With the experience now behind me, I can affirm that the concept of culture, discussed imaginatively in all or most of its dimensions, can provide various aspects of an educational program. In addition, after several days of dialogue with the Culture Circle participants, the educators can ask the participants directly, what other themes or subjects could we discuss besides these? As each person replies, the answer is noted down and is immediately proposed to the group as a problem. One of the group members may say, for example, "I'd like to talk about nationalism." "Very well," says the educator, noting down the suggestion, and adds, "What does nationalism mean? Why is a discussion about nationalism of any interest to us?" My experience shows that when a suggestion is posed as a problem to the group, new themes appear. If, in an area where, for example, 30 culture circles meet on the same night, all the coordinators, educators, proceed in this fashion, the central team will have a rich variety of thematic material for study. The important thing, from the point of view of libertarian education, is for the people to come to feel like masters of their thinking by discussing the thinking and views of the world, explicitly or implicitly manifest in their own suggestions and those of their comrades. Because this view of education starts with the conviction that it cannot present its own program, but must search for the program dialogically with the people, it serves to introduce the pedagogy of the oppressed, in the elaboration of which the oppressed must participate. End of Chapter 3, Part 9, and end of Chapter 3.